Good late morning, everybody. Welcome to a webinar by 123net and Megaport titled Why an On-Premise Data Center is Not the Future. We'll let some folks trickle in as we go, but we'll go through the title slides and get some introductions started. So as 123net, we believe this is a helpful topic to present on because with our position in the marketplace, we work with enterprise technology teams on projects like moving out of on-premise data centers and also designing networks, which the two typically go hand in hand. So our goal with this presentation is to discuss why it makes sense to consider moving away from operating a data center on-premise and how other enterprises have made the transition in case this is something that your IT team or your just business as a whole is looking at this in the future. As a heads up, we have, if you have any questions throughout the presentation, there is a question box you can submit and we will get those answered towards the end. So if something comes up, please ping us. Also, we do have 2 poll questions that you guys will be responding to. It'd be great if we could have your guys's kind of teamwork, if you could volunteer one of your votes for the answers, and we can kind of shape our presentation based on the results. So a few introductions. Myself, I'm Noah Laceris. I'm on the strategic account team at 123net, meaning that I help on the sales side of helping enterprises with their network and data center needs. I work with the automotive manufacturing industries, finance, healthcare, and high tech, automotive mobility as well. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. Mike Rockwell, I'm the Global Head of Solution Architects here at Megaport. So I work with a group of solution architects across Europe, North America, and Asia Pacific. So we're on the front lines, building hybrid and multi-cloud solutions generally on a global scale. And it is early in the morning. It's 9 a.m. I'm based in Denver, Colorado, but the coffee is still hot. So we're ready to go.
Great. And then John Ironman, he'll also be here towards the end for any engineering questions, if anyone has some special questions about the facility and how we do things. A little bit about 123net. So I'll introduce the company in case some folks aren't familiar with us. If you live in the Michigan areas and you live in specifically the metro areas, you may have seen our trucks and our crews out and about building fiber. So that does support the majority of our mission, which is building network to make Michigan communities and businesses the best connected on the planet. So I guess what that means to us is we're very focused on building network in the state. We don't have any services or data centers outside of the state of Michigan, which is pretty unique for a carrier. Usually carriers expand, whether it's regionally, nationally, or globally. But we've kept things tight here because we have a lot of enterprises to help here. We believe that our mission keeps us here in Michigan, and we build about 200 to 300 miles of fiber per year in this state. And we're doing that for both businesses and communities. Broadband, fiber to the home, all of those things are things we're involved in. And hopefully we can say, Michigan is the best connected on the planet because of the work that we've helped shape. A few of our business solutions: data center services, which is the core of our presentation today; network services, which I mentioned go hand in hand; and also voice services. So we have our own hosted PBX platform, voice over IP, traditional SIP trunking as well. So all of these services, it's nice to have on one invoice. Our NOC, Network Operations Center, and support teams are 24/7 to support all of these products. And the company was founded in 1995. So we've been around for quite some time. The 4 owners are still with the company today, involved in daily operations. They're rolling up their sleeves with us. So kind of a unique story as far as a carrier goes. We know that we have a special place here in Michigan, and a lot of our enterprise customers do enjoy the fact that we are located locally in Southfield and have trucks and techs and support nearby. A few of the key numbers to help shape kind of what 123net has done and how we've grown in the past. We have 40 plus carriers and providers accessible via all of our data centers. And we have also the 9th ranked internet exchange. It's the largest fee-free internet exchange in the world that's hosted in our data centers. It's called the Detroit Internet Exchange, and some of you may be aware of that. Members include Google, Amazon, Facebook, Netflix, General Motors, etc. So they are able to exchange traffic freely with each other, and it's a huge growing opportunity for enterprises who are using cloud services, etc. We have about 4.5 route miles of fiber throughout the state, over 3,000 lit buildings, meaning we have 3,000 non-123net buildings throughout the state that have 123net fiber available at them for you to connect to, and those are increasing on a daily basis. It's important that we establish one thing, which is a common understanding of the definition of co-location and data centers, because they are very close. So before we jump into the rest of this, I want to just clarify, data center is a very broad term because that can be really any room or area that houses technology or data equipment. Some folks refer to on-premise data centers as private because they are used solely for a single organization's applications. And public would be used for a data center intended for many tenants to host their infrastructure, and they can all benefit from the ecosystem that that builds, that is purpose built for multiple users. But public isn't necessarily a term that's commonly used. It's a term that a lot of people don't really want to hear in relation to their secure data. It makes them think of a public park or public transportation. So as a result, we use the term co-location or colo to describe a data center housing many tenants. So our solution would be to, of course, talk to you about co-location and things like that, but why exactly would co-location make sense for you? The title of this slide is Out with the Old, In with the Future, and that's not a knock against anyone maintaining their on-site server environment. We know that that's fairly standard. However, we do see that shifting. So enterprises are migrating workloads out of on-premise data centers and into the cloud. And at this point, it's a mixed bag of enterprises leveraging cloud for primary or secondary, depending on what their budgets will allow, or maybe the industry that they're in and some of the demands that their customers have for delivering their services or content. So whether primary or secondary, should the non-cloud environment live in a traditional office space? That's really the main question that 123net has been helping enterprises answer, because modernizing on-prem comes at a high cost. So on-premise data centers were typically purpose-built for a certain snapshot of time, and then also a range of usage after that time. So if 10 years ago a data center was built with a certain level of power and heating, or sorry, excuse me, power, cooling, and security, then what you're looking at later is if that usage increases or decreases out of that range, then that facility is no longer fitting the needs specifically for what it was built for. Fewer enterprises are investing in office space for people. Traditionally, it's always been, it's not a matter of will we have an office, it's where will our office be. And now it is more of will we have an office, and how much smaller will that office be compared to the way we had it in the last few years. Also, we're aware that increased cloud usage or software as a service usage, a lot of businesses are going to. That means increased data usage. So, the network is taking has been moving up in a list of priorities and a list of must-haves and level of diversity and protection that enterprises have to build and pay for their networks to be accessible for all their employees that aren't necessarily sitting in the same seats they were a few years ago. So our solution, as I mentioned, is co-location. So we believe co-location is the answer to this because it fills the need when transitioning away from on-premise. And if cloud is the chosen path, it paves the way for smooth migration and a diverse balance once that migration is completed. And that's why we have Mike Rockwell and the Megaport team here to talk a little bit more about that. But as far as 123net's concerned, our words of wisdom are the below, which is all co-location facilities are not equal. As I mentioned, some facilities are purpose-built for a certain range or a certain period of time, and as time goes on, things shift and things change. But some co-location facilities, they may have been built for a certain level of density, and now the equipment is getting more dense, it's consuming more power, it's exhausting more heat, it's requiring more cooling. And what happens is in co-location facilities that aren't continually investing are going to see themselves not be able to handle the level of requirements that that I guess enterprise IT equipment may need now or in the future. So which is why enterprises need to invest in a data center built for the future. And as mentioned, anywhere IT equipment lives, it can be called a data center. But is it a data center where you want your critical applications to live? That's the question to ask yourself. And then increased connectivity. Some applications aren't compatible with cloud environments, so you need those two environments to talk to each other. And rather than building that into your office space, you may want to think about a co-location facility that already has that to offer. The natural progression for an on-prem environment is when they're moving to a co-location or data center. Network kits typically deploy first, and then they become established and set the stage for a development environment. And finally, the production infrastructure. I think that's the method of migration that 123net is most familiar with. It's the lowest risk for the enterprises who may be new to co-location, maybe choosing a new vendor, etc. So we're going to spend a good amount of time on this slide, mainly because connectivity is one of my passions. It's also the passion of 123net, and we've really noticed that a lot of the work and projects that we've done and helped enterprise teams with centers around connectivity. Power, and cooling, and security, those things are all very important, but we've seen connectivity really rise to the top. So 123net did create a poll recently for IT teams to rank the top priorities when searching for a co-location facility, and the results showed around 70% of respondents ranked connectivity options as the top priority when looking for a co-location facility. Now, some may say, how can you do that when the power and the security, those may come ahead when it comes to maybe compliances and things like that, or how can I run my equipment if the power isn't there? But the reality is that data centers and co-location facilities now are just expected to have all those T's crossed and I's dotted. But the connectivity is something that takes a long time to build up because you're working with other groups and other vendors like carriers and network as a service providers like Megaport, and that takes a lot of work and a lot of time to build up. And that's why we're starting with it today, because think like a carrier has been a mantra 123net shares with network and infrastructure teams we work with. It means we want enterprises to shift away from the traditional approach of operating solely as a consumer of carrier connections that connect to their on-premise data center. Another carrier will build fiber or something into the office building. But what happens when the on-premise data center isn't necessarily fitting the needs? Then things need to change, and those carrier connections may not always cross over. So we want you to shift into a mindset of focusing on designing their network to be as agnostic and neutral and easily accessible for your clients and your users of the infrastructure. And so that mindset shift, we recognize really future proofs organizations as they grow and expand. So for example, here's a visual for the cyclical progression we work for. Carriers deploy their clusters or points of presence in highly connected facilities. They move traffic in a region, and they want to deliver enough capacity for their end users inside or outside of 123net's data centers. And then when carriers deploy in our facility, it's a win-win for all parties, because carriers attract their enterprise customers who need to move data to their other sites. And then enterprises attract other vendors like a Megaport or like a Cloudflare and managed security, private cloud, etc. Then it becomes a kind of like an ecosystem where all of these tenants in the neutral data center, they're all kind of feeding business into each other and deploying, and then they're enticing other vendors and other enterprise clients to deploy into the data center. It's just kind of a cycle that really plays well for the future of the stability of your enterprise infrastructure.
Thank you, Noah. And you mentioned connectivity and flexibility around your co-location slide, and really that's what Megaport brings to kind of the cloud connectivity world. And we'll talk a little bit about that, but just a high-level overview of Megaport. We're a global network as a service provider, and really Megaport was founded on the premise that customers should be able to build private network connectivity out of data centers to their cloud environments in the same fashion that they deploy their resources or applications in the cloud, and that's in a flexible, on-demand manner. We've built out our private network across 25 countries. So about a month ago, we launched in Mexico City. And that's interconnecting roughly 700 data centers across APAC, North America, and EMEA. Along with connecting those data centers, since we're really a cloud connectivity play, we've also built 240 on-ramp locations directly with the hyperscalers or the cloud providers. And really, when you think about building out cloud connectivity, and we'll get more into this in the presentation, it's really optimal for you to connect to the edge of the cloud closest to your data center environment. So, Megaport has more on-ramps globally than anyone else providing cloud connectivity. Also, we have a compute platform that allows customers to deploy virtual routers across the globe. And this is really great for cloud-to-cloud connectivity, and we'll talk about some of those strategies. We also launched our Megaport Virtual Edge about a year and a half ago. And this allows customers to deploy virtual network functions on a Megaport compute infrastructure and to build out private connectivity integrated into an SD-WAN type of environment. And I'll talk a little bit about that as well. And all of our services can be turned up via customer-facing management portal. So it can all be automated either through APIs. We also have a Terraform repository that we publish on GitHub. But all of our services are at the customer's fingertips. So anytime you talk about hybrid cloud or public cloud connectivity, you always have to have some type of survey or a slide that shows how customers are migrating into those environments. But we all know that most of our customers that we're working with are hybrid and multi-cloud. So 82% of enterprises today have a hybrid cloud type of infrastructure, and 92% of enterprises are utilizing a multi-cloud type of environment. So you really have to start thinking about, as you're either moving towards a hybrid cloud type of connectivity, or even if you have already gone hybrid cloud, you really need to think about how you can modernize and build in flexibility to build hybrid cloud connections. And that's really what Megaport's about. One of the things that I think is always interesting in talking to some of our customers that have moved into the cloud, they typically find that maybe not all of their resources should be housed in the cloud, and sometimes have what I call a cloud regret. They get that first invoice from the cloud provider after a couple of months, and they realize that maybe they hadn't account for all the cloud spend that they had budgeted for when they decided to move applications into the cloud. So in some cases, you see customers move to the cloud and then also pull some of those resources back into the data center as well. So while cloud is certainly growing, certainly I think there's still a place for the data center in that strategy. So a little bit about who we work with and who we connect to. So 123net is a great partner of Megaport, and we're certainly happy to be here on this webinar with them today. We've deployed in the 123net data center in Detroit, so customers can connect to our network there and access any of the providers that you see here on the screen. Now, we work across 105 data center operators. So if you have disparate data centers or other third-party data centers out of 123net, you can build private connectivity through our software-defined networking platform to any one of those other data center providers. For more information on our locations, you can go to megaport.com and simply pull up locations, and you can see the specific data centers where our network is deployed. So with the primary kind of focus of Megaport has been cloud connectivity. So we do work among all the large hyperscalers, the logos you see here. We also have connectivity directly with Cloudflare, which Noah mentioned earlier, and some of the SaaS providers in Salesforce and SAP Cloud. So again, we've built out the physical connectivity at the edge to connect to their networks, but we've also automated that connectivity through an API integration integrated with our software-defined network. So in any case, if you want to turn up connectivity out of the 123net data center to any of these providers, it can all be done in an on-demand fashion within minutes. So outside of the larger hyperscalers, we also have a marketplace that has some of our third-party providers as well. And typically we're seeing more and more that customers want to build private connections with some of their UCaaS providers. So we do have connectivity to partners like RingCentral and Zoom on our platform as well, and about 300 plus others that you can find on our marketplace. I mentioned our Megaport Virtual Edge, and The virtual edge was really founded to be integrated with SD-WAN providers. So we work with Cisco Viptela, we work with Aruba Silverpeak, Fortinet, Versa, and VMware. And essentially what you can do with that virtual edge is you can deploy a license on that virtual edge. It can be orchestrated into your SD-WAN environment, and you can build virtual infrastructure on a global scale. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go through the prezo. Just real quick, just to clarify some of the components. So if you haven't built out private connections from your data center into the cloud, there's just a couple things to be aware of. First off, no carrier or network provider is built directly into a cloud region. The cloud providers have built their own networks from those regions to what they refer to as on-ramps or edge locations. So these edge locations are third-party data centers where carriers typically meet, and that's where you're going to procure these private connections from the cloud providers in the form of AWS with their Direct Connect model, Azure with their Express routes, Oracle with their Fast Connect, and so on. What Megaport is providing is the connectivity from the data center. So in this case, in 123net, we're providing the connectivity from that data center over our private network to the optimal edge location to connect to the cloud. So this is a layer 2 connection over the Megaport platform. And typically, if a customer is connecting in the data center, they're routing directly from that data center into the cloud. They're going to set up a BGP peering relationship from their on-premise network to the cloud gateway that they've deployed with whichever cloud provider that they're utilizing. So from a Megaport perspective, again, that edge location of the cloud providers sits in third-party data centers, but it doesn't sit in every data center across the globe. So we're providing that connectivity to really bring that edge into every data center where we're connected. So talk a little bit about the architecture and what customers build, and especially in relation to 123net. So our typical type of deployment and kind of our legacy deployment would be a hybrid cloud solution. So here I've just put in a screenshot of our portal. So again, software-defined network. All of our services can be ordered through a management portal. But if I wanted to deploy a 1 gig or 10 gig connection to the Megaport network on a router within 123net, I'd simply go into the portal, I click on Create Port, I'd select 123net, I'd select a 10 gig interface. Once I check out that service, which takes about 1 to 2 minutes, we'll actually have a live port in 123net on our router. At that point, you'll also have an LOA CFA, so that'll give 123net the fiber assignment within the data center. So our customers will provide 123net with that LOA CFA. They'll run the cross connect from the customer colo or cage to the Megaport router. Once that connection is established, we'll set up a trunk. So these are going to be 802.1q trunks. And from there, customers can build out logical connections in terms of what we term VXCs to the cloud provider edge over our private platform. So in this particular case, Megaport is providing the layer 2 connectivity from 123net to Google, Azure, and AWS. And then our customer is providing the peering or routing relationship and turning up BGP with each one of those providers. So this is a case where if I'm having a multi-cloud type of architecture, all of that data is coming back into 123net to be consumed, or potentially, it's getting routed back out to the cloud provider if I have a multi-cloud type of deployment where I'm routing cloud to cloud. So we do have options to simplify multi-cloud, hybrid multi-cloud connectivity in the form of what we call a Megaport Cloud Router. So this is a virtual routing instance that can be deployed across our global infrastructure and typically sits in core POPs on our network. And why that's important that it sits in core POPs is those are typically the locations where the cloud provider edge sits as well. So just to give you kind of a common example, if I'm in Detroit and 123net, I connect to Megaport, I build a connection to an MCR that's deployed in Ashburn, Virginia, in that US East region, which is very common cloud region. I can deploy that MCR. I can then set up connectivity to each one of the cloud providers through that MCR right at the edge of the cloud and close to those regions. So just to give you an example, if I wanted to connect to US East and AWS in Northern Virginia, I wanted to connect to East 4 with Google also in Northern Virginia, I can set up BGP peers to each one of those clouds. I can route between those clouds and achieve a sub 5 milliseconds latency. So as you start thinking about multi-cloud environments, and maybe you don't have the physical presence close to the edge, certainly you can use these MCRs as part of your strategy, but then also build connectivity through Megaport's private backbone back into your data center, in this case, 123net in Detroit. So great option for customers that utilize a multi-cloud strategy. Just to build this out a little bit further, if you do want to build in resiliency into the network, you can do that as well. So within any core market location, you can deploy MCRs in pairs, and those are physically going to be deployed within 2 physically different sites. So there's physical diversity, and then you can build the redundancy in your routing off of each of those MCRs. From a data center perspective, again, we are in multiple data centers. So if you're in 123net in Detroit, and maybe you have another data center that you operate out of across the globe that sits on the Megaport fabric, you can utilize that Megaport backbone to build connectivity from 1 meg all the way up to 10 gigs. And that is flexible as well. So maybe you have projects that you want to move data between your data centers outside of your WAN. You can stand up a connection through Megaport. You can turn it up for a short time and turn it down. You can also flex it up and down from that 1 meg to 10 gigs, or you can leave it up and utilize it as part of your routing across your backbone. So I'm going to touch on our MVA service again here just real quickly. And again, it was really built to be integrated with the SD-WAN providers that I showed earlier. And it's built around a lot of the strategies that we see in the market today around kind of that network modernization or network transformation to a virtual type of environment. And the premise is that now I don't have to have physical POPs deployed on a global scale. I can deploy a virtual POP. I can orchestrate that into my SD-WAN environment on top of the Megaport virtual edge. I can then, through my SD-WAN environment, build IPsec tunnels to the MVE and then utilize SLA-backed private connectivity to the cloud that's already integrated on the Megaport network. I can also then build private connectivity back to my data center. I can also build out a global WAN backbone in connecting MVEs together across the Megaport platform. So as customers start to move into SD-WAN environments and become more reliant on the internet, certainly performance over longer spans, you have throughput challenges, you have jitter, all those things don't really lead to the optimal experience. So building that short hop first mile over the internet, utilizing private SLA-backed connectivity across Megaport is something that we're seeing our customers transition to. This is an example of what you can build with our services. So this is a customer that we've currently deployed with Cisco. They have multiple MVE or routing hubs set up in the United States. They have them in Amsterdam within Europe, and then also within Singapore that they've deployed in pairs. Now off those hubs, they can aggregate those branch sites into Megaport. They can, on the MVE, they can then connect back into the 123 data center, and they can also route directly to their cloud environment. And again, this is all done via a virtualized platform. So changes can be made on the fly to bandwidth, can be made on the fly, changes can be made on the fly and adding connectivity to the cloud providers as well. And we can also make changes to connectivity back in the data center. So really modernizing and bringing that flexibility to your fingertips. Now, this is a good example of a customer of ours in 123net. So one of the global automotive manufacturer leaders that build out a hybrid cloud strategy. Now, when they first came to us, it was really about building out connectivity into AWS, and they wanted to access cloud regions on the West Coast. So we provided connectivity through the Megaport platform to the West Coast in San Jose, and they connected to that West region. We also provided connectivity on the East Coast into Reston. Now, one of the key things here and why they really wanted to talk to Megaport to bring us into the equation as opposed to maybe just going to a carrier and building out point-to-point connections, is they really wanted to future-proof their network because they know they were going to be adding additional resources and they didn't want to take the time to turn up additional connectivity. They wanted to do it all in an automated fashion using a single platform and a single connection into the network with Megaport. So as time went on, they've added connections to Azure. So we connect them into Chicago, and they're going to the West region, ultimately connect to their Azure resources. They've also added SAP, and they've also added multiple third-party providers through our marketplace. And all of that was done, through a 10 gig connection, building out those logical connections across our private platform. I didn't represent it here, but they're also utilizing Megaport services in additional data centers throughout North America and also in Europe as well. So very similar type of connectivity out of additional data centers and additional markets. So if you have any questions on Megaport, this really wraps up my part of the presentation. Feel free to reach out to myself or to Megaport, and we're happy to talk through any of these solutions in conjunction with 123net. So thank you, and I'll hand it back to Noah.
Now we want to show the we started with connectivity, we went with power, and now we're going with flexibility. So if you guys can see the flexibility screen, on-premise data centers are typically built for a set range of usage, as I was mentioning earlier: space, power, cooling, security. So when you guys are evaluating what to do with your projects in the future, always look for what it's going to require for the next 10 years and make decisions for a long-term solution, as opposed to maybe investing in a facility that will only take care of your needs for a short period of time. And one of the advantages is that colocation can expand and contract based on your infrastructure demands. Meaning, if you deploy a certain set of equipment and you go through a hardware refresh, and your equipment means that you actually require fewer racks or fewer rack units in one rack, those are things that you guys can, as enterprise customers of ours, you guys can tailor your space in our data center based on that. And when you purpose build an on-premise data center, you're still paying for the square footage that you built the facility for to begin with. And that's something that you don't necessarily have to worry about being in a facility like ours, which has plenty of room to expand. If you have needs, your clients are demanding things, we can be quick to install additional racks, more power for equipment, cross connects, network, etc. Those are all things that you don't have to wait around for long periods of time for or take care of by yourself. So once again, just to review, we believe that the solution to a lot of these aches and pains that you may be experiencing, whether now or in the future, will be co-location under the 3 criteria. And we understand the direction of the market. We know that we believe co-location is the answer. This is because it fills the need when transitioning away from on-premise. And like I said before, if cloud is the chosen path, it helps with the migration, and it helps with having those vendors there like Megaport ready to help you guys out with private cloud connectivity. Remember, all co-location facilities are not equal. Invest in a data center built for the future. And remember the natural progression. You can deploy a network kit, deploy a development environment, maybe test the waters and see how things work for you. And then you can also talk to our enterprise clients and get their feel for how things have gone for them if they've been in our facility. Once again, one of the best ways to learn more and get a feel for it is to visit the physical location.